McGee. And way you became a driver was seniority. In other words, if this driver retired and you were next in seniority, you'd get that job. Well, he was the next one up as a laborer for a driving job. They wouldn't give it to him for obvious reasons. Well, he fought it through the NAACP, and he ended up becoming a driver. But they was not going to give him that job because of his race. And but no, Battelle, to their credit, was the first ones to make a overt effort to hire black people. And that's where gentleman you mentioned earlier. And, Battelle had not overwhelming, but a number of blacks working for them. And in inhalation toxicology, we had a number in animal care as well as in the crafts, in the crafts. So I would say from 63 on, it started changing.
So that's kind of my last question. We'll have students accessing these interviews. Most of my students now are too young to have remembered the Cold War. It's sort of been over.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about, so what it was like being part of this Cold War effort, and what you'd like students or sort of future generations to know about contributions to that process.
Yeah. I know there's different views on this, but I feel very strong about because I knew a lot of GIs from that time frame. Had two uncles that were in the war, and the atomic bombs, and we made the plutonium here for the bomb, literally ended the war. I mean, I am a firm believer, had we had to invade, there'd been hundreds of thousands on both sides killed. And, they talk about the badness, rightfully so, of the atomic bomb. But you look at the conventional bombing of Germany, and it was as bad or worse than the atomic bombs. The firebombing of Tokyo, things like that. So as bad as atomic bombs was, it did end the war. And, you'd had to live through it. Now, as far as the Cold War goes, the place wasn't supposed to last much more than 10 years. And that's what everyone thought. Well, then, the Russians got the bomb. Well, that changed things a little bit. And it was scary. I mean, like I said earlier, me calling my brother a communist. I wasn't old enough to really realize what was going on, but I can remember it would have been during the Korean War. My dad came to meet my brother and I and said, I want to know where you guys are all the time. Says, because, we might have to leave town in a hurry. I mean, that was the mentality of that time. We had air raid sirens throughout the town. I can remember I believe it was Monday at 10 o'clock, they'd go off to test. But there was one right behind Jason Lee where I was going at the time, and it was loud. But I think it was Monday or Tuesday at 10 o'clock, they'd go off. Because we literally were on standby. I mean, we didn't know what was going to happen. And, but the Korean War and then the McCarthy era, it was a scary time for adults. As a kid, you didn't notice it other than, watching others. But no, I think that the Hanford had a lot to do with ending the war, and which ushered in the Cold War. because of the proliferation of the weapons. And you know, you have to give credit to whomever for tearing down the wall, for you know, bringing somewhat of peace in the world. I say somewhat, but I think that it was our spending billions of dollars building up our, you know, the old saying, peace through strength. That's what Reagan did. You know, he was a big spender, but he got the job done. But Hanford was unique because I can still remember, there was anti-aircraft placements out there. When I hired on, all the old track houses were still there. I worked on a fuel truck, and we'd fuel here and there, and then we'd go out into the desert area, if you will, and look at these old houses that were still standing. And the old ice house was still there, and a lot of these buildings were still there in the 60s. And why they had a need to tear them all down, I don't know. I think it was a shame. But they tore them all down other than the bank and the school, I believe, about all that's left. But, no, it was a different time, and like I say, I can still remember my dad telling us both, I want to know where you are in case we have to leave town. But I mentioned earlier the FBI. It was not unusual to have an FBI agent knock at the door and and talk to my folks about so-and-so. We had neighbors that lived in the same house, you know, in our A house, our neighbors there. There's there one day and gone the next. You know, it wasn't unusual to, you're out of here.
Certainly a different time. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming in and sharing your memories with us. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll film all these goodies you brought us.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yep.
Before we let you go.